Hello BookTube and welcome back to my 2025 library tour. In this episode, more history. This shelf begins with Australia, A New History of the Great Southern Land by Frank Welsh. So this is the history of Australia that I did not like as much as Frank Welsh's earlier South Africa. But I did want to add a work of Australian history or history of Australia to my collection, which seems to be fairly rare. As far as I can tell, there aren't much in the way of Australian histories or histories written by Australians available in the US. Next up is China's Cosmopolitan Empire, the Tang Dynasty, by Mark Edward Lewis. This is part of a series that basically gives brief introductions to the various dynasties of Imperial China. I read this years ago and wanted to add it to my collection. I also have The Troubled Empire, China in the Yuan and Ming Dynasties by Timothy Brooke. Empires of the Week, The Real Story of European Expansion and the Creation of the New World Order by J.C. Sharman. So this slim little book argues that the European colonial empires were, for the most part, weak against the peoples they encountered during the earlier phase of European expansion outside of the Americas. But that gradually changed towards the later part of the period in the 19th century. Fairly dense and academic. It's been a while since I read it. Probably won't revisit it. Japan, A Modern History of Japan from Tokugawa Times to the Present by Andrew Gordon. I think I've dipped into this a few times before I finally decided to buy it. I would like to have more Japanese history in my collection, but again, I find it hard to find Japanese history outside of World War II. A History of China by John Key. So this is a history of China from China's earliest days to the near present. I tried it last year and did not get on with it at all, which makes me leery to have a go at Key's India, A History. Emergency Chronicles, Indira Gandhi and Democracy's Turning Point by Gyana Prakash. Thinking this is about the period of time in which India was under a form of martial law during the premiership of Indira Gandhi. Have not gotten around to this. Nor have I gotten around to New Lefts, The Making of a Radical Tradition by Terence Renaud. And I have also not gotten to Digging Up Armageddon, The Search for the Lost City of Solomon by Eric H. Klein. So this is a work of the history of archaeology. So this focuses on a specific dig in biblical archaeology. Eric H. Klein has also written a number of books on the collapse of the ancient Near East. I mentioned that earlier in this tour. I read 2 books by Klein, one of which was the 1177 BC, which I think did not care for. And then there was another book about the history of archaeology, which I think was a much better book. So I think perhaps Klein is better at the history of archaeology than the subjects that archaeology covers. If that makes any sense. Next is Survivors, Children's Lives After the Holocaust by Rebecca Clifford. This is a book about the children who survived the Holocaust and what happened to them for much of their lives. This was a powerful book. Queen Victoria's Matchmaking, The Royal Marriages That Shaped Europe by Deborah Cadbury. So this is a book that I did not get on with. I might give it another go, or I might not. I haven't decided. Cuba, An American History by Ada Ferrer. So this is a history of Cuba with a special focus on Cuba's very toxic relationship to the United States. This was a really good book and definitely earned the Pulitzer Prize. The Black Prince of Florence by Catherine Fletcher. This is a biography of Alessandro de' Medici, who was either the half-brother of Catherine de' Medici, who would become Queen of France, or he was a bastard son of the second Medici Pope. I don't remember which one that was, though. But Alessandro de' Medici was a Medici heir who of questionable parentage on his mother's side. And he eventually became head of the family, although not uncontested, and he earned the favor of the Holy Roman Emperor at the time, which is why he became the first Medici Duke of Florence. Although he would be assassinated by a cousin of his and factions within Florence who did not want Medici dukes. Although the dukedom passed on to a branch family and eventually became a grand duchy. And the emperor, I think Charles, spent a good chunk of the rest of his life making sure that the men who killed Alessandro de' Medici did not live to enjoy it. He made sure they were hunted down and assassinated. Really enjoyed that book. India's War, World War II and the Making of Modern South Asia by Srinath Raghavan. Have not gotten around to it yet. I also have not gotten around to The Rise and Fall of Maya Civilization by J. Eric S. Thompson, which is a former library book from the Texas State Library, Austin, Texas. Wonder how this came into my possession. Either it was a Friends of the Library book sale, or it was de-accessed and found its way to me somehow or other. Britain at Bay. The Epic Story of the Second World War, 1938 to 1941 by Ellen Allport. Have not gotten around to this one either. So that wraps up that shelf. On this side of this bookcase, there is one more shelf. And then next week, well, into the work week, the final 4 shelves. So I should finish this up on Wednesday. Well, yeah, it will be Wednesday because there's not very much on the 4th shelf on the other side. So I'm going to include it in with the 3rd shelf. So in the booktube, history is coming to its end. And then I'll have to figure out what the hell I'm going to do with the manga part of this tour. Wish me luck on that. Thank you, booktube. Have a great rest of your morning and afternoon. And I will see you tomorrow with another episode of my 2025 library tour, History.